Hey, what is up, everybody? Just plugging in my there. So hopefully you all can hear me. And this is going to be fun. This is going to be us just having a little Q&A over the next little bit. Let me tell you a little bit about myself first. My name is Dr. Matt, and I, in 2015, had horrific herniated disc. I mean, it knocked me on my ass. Literally for 4 months, I laid in bed, and I learned a lot about my life. I learned a lot about my life. I learned about pain. I learned about recovery. I learned about gratitude. I learned about really amazing things, and I just really appreciate it now. I mean, it was almost 6 years later, and wrote the book that's now called Pain Sucks. No one gets to tell you that you can't heal, and I'm pretty proud of that. A lot of people have already grabbed onto that, and it's been pretty powerful for people. And of course, it's the stuff that we teach people here. I'm actually in my adjusting room of my clinic right now, so if anybody has any questions, go ahead and type them in the comments. What I wrote yesterday was this: that number one, not a surgeon. And I'm not an MD, so I can't prescribe medication, and I don't do surgery. So those are two things I'm really gonna stay away from. They're not my. I know a lot about them, and I know which ones work, which ones don't, and I can comment through some help through there. But as far as like specifics and stuff, I don't have any of that. So, anyways. Let's see. So what I do know very well is the spine, and I do know very well is the discs, and I do know how you handle inflammation very well. And that's what I've become really kind of an expert in the last 6 years. It's really funny because when I went through it, I would have given anything to have like just this centralized place of knowledge and places I could go. I was calling friends and colleagues and picking and pulling things together, and I'm super blessed. And a lot of those people you can catch on our podcast on YouTube, on Pain Sucks podcast, on our YouTube page, and you can learn about those people and what I learned from them. But what we wanted to try to do is bring one central location into a place where people that are in massive amounts of pain don't have to spend hours where they can't think straight because the pain is so bad, and instead it's just right there, and they can go and they can pick and they can choose what they would like. So anyways, that's me. We'll talk a little bit about the two things that I believe while we're waiting for people. Number one is so here's the mindset. Number one is when you stop pointing fingers at everything else that caused your disc herniations, things get a lot better. And I don't mean like, that you take it all on yourself, but understanding that, the body did certain things over the course of time. Let's talk about that real fast, because people do email me about that kind of stuff. And that is this. Hey guys, and as you're coming on, if you have a question, just type them in the comments and I can see those. But nobody herniates a disc just cause. So it's not like one day the pain was there and you found out you herniated a disc and it just happened. It happens slowly over time. That's the anatomy. That's the science of things. Slowly that spine gets beat up, and slowly what happens as that spine begins to lock down, and slowly those little tiny movements of the spine begin to go away, and the disc really has nowhere else to go over time. It has to leave, and it has to kind of extrude and come out, and there's various levels of that. But it didn't just happen. Outside of a couple things, maybe a massive trauma, like a horrific car accident, some kind of athletic injury that just the spine there was nothing left. But even in those cases, I would argue that there was still already evidence: loss of curvature, loss of motion. And again, I'm talking about the things that you didn't feel, you didn't notice, they just happened. It's kind of like this. You don't wake up in the morning, go, "Oh, my tooth hurts." In that last, just right before I felt it, it must have happened. Nope. It was lack of care, lack of brushing, lack of flossing, all that over time hurt the tooth, outside of I just jammed something into my tooth, right? So the majority of us, 99% of us, we beat ourselves up over time. Even 15, 12, 10-year-olds have just got beat up over time. That nice round curve that nice, beautiful, healthy spine that God gave us, it went away. And we began to lose the curves, and we began to lose the micromotion, as I call it. Let me stop for a second and talk about that. Micromotion, people ask me, just because you can touch your toes or turn your head left and right doesn't mean you have full motion. Your body's massively adaptable. It will make you do things and allow things to happen despite the fact that small things may not be working right. So if you take like the bones in the middle of the neck, each bone participates in a whole with the neck, but also participates singly with its neighbor above and its neighbor below. When we lose that motion with the neighbor above and the neighbor below, that's what I call micromotion. Those are the ones you're not going to find out about because it's not going to stop you from looking left and looking right, not right away. And what happens is as you lose that micromotion, whether it's in the neck like we described, or low back or mid back, the body begins to recognize that as an injury and an insult, and it begins to lock things down. Muscles, ligaments, tendons. It actually creates inflammation, inflammatory processes, and all the while you don't know what's happening. That's micromotion. So if that's happening over the course of a year, a decade, several decades, and then all of a sudden one day there's this nasty back and disc injury, I would also say that likely if you and I took some honesty serum and had a conversation, I could say things like, hey, do you ever remember a time in the past where your back just wasn't right? And you know, what people do is, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah. Oh, I did have that. Oh yeah. No, I do remember one Thanksgiving where, no, I do remember. Yeah, every 3 months, these are things I hear all the time. These are warning signs you lost your micromotion. So you didn't just injure it just now. It's been injured for a really long time. It's just the disc finally just came out, right? And to various degrees, that's where the pain is that we're being felt. So that's what happens first. It can happen from birth even. Lots and lots of evidence that the birth process alone actually twists and torques and messes with our spine. So children are starting life off with the no motion fully through their spine. The loss of micromotion has already begun. And so, you know, we're wondering why we're seeing teenage injuries and people in their 20s with all these problems that we lost a long time ago. So immediately then the body sees these loss of motion, this micromotion and these injuries, and it begins the inflammatory process. Now, if you look up the word inflammation in the dictionary, what happens is a wonderful definition that talks you through what happens with inflammation. And while inflammation is really great for healing and we should honor it and take care of it, what happens is when it's there for a really long time, it works against us. And so I would argue that many of us who are in this position, who are emailing me questions and texting me and interacting with me, you're way past that good stuff and you're into the bad stuff and it hurts and you're trying to figure out, you know, what do I do? How do I get this disc to go back in, thinking that that's going to fix all our problems? And it's not, because the inflammatory process is going to stay even until the disc goes back in. It's still got work to do. So we have to handle inflammation. So we have to recognize that we lost the small motions and now we have to handle inflammation. And we can do that in lots of ways. So the medical community, typically we're looking at hard anti-inflammatories, medications, even all the way up through steroids and opioids, because we're so afraid of the pain that we medicate ourselves out of that, thinking we're handling the problem when we know we're not. I mean, you know, listen, there's a time and place for medication, but most of us understand that medication is for emergencies. But most of us are using it with back and neck injuries, or using it on a regular basis, which now we're not in that crisis anymore. Or in fact, we might actually be stuck in a perpetual crisis that we don't know what to do. So we have got to handle inflammation, but more in the way that the body was intended to handle it, in a very natural way, and sort of support that. Now, I'm not against periods of time with medicine. I did it. So I had my Norco and I had some gabapentin. At some point I did a steroid pack. I get what it's like where you can't even stand upright for days at a time. So you need some help to live life. But inevitably what we have to do is we have to get that out of our bodies and we have to start handling inflammation. So if you read the book, I think that there's like 15 pages on ideas and cleanses and things that we can do to handle inflammation and allow our body to clean the chronic stuff and move us back into that acute phase where we where we're having inflammation actually work for us. Now that's the key. So when people reach out to me, whether it's a client coming in or you guys, one of the things I'm always interested in is figuring out where you're at in terms of the ability to start handling the motion of your spine and handling inflammation. And so that brings me to the last thing. I want us to understand that we have to be patient. Nobody gets to tell us that we can't heal. And you know what? I interact on Facebook pages and Instagram and Twitter and stuff. And it's really amazing to me, the people who have lost hope, because their comments to other people is always like, you'll be like this forever. This will always be forever. And that's really disheartening to see, because that is not the case. That's their case. That doesn't need to be everyone's case. And so I want you to be patient. And I describe it to people that come in like this. Remember the last time you were watching maybe a sports program is usually my best analogy, and you watched one of the athletes get tackled in a funny way or come down in a funny way, and like that lower leg snaps or that knee twist where your gut just kind of rumbles a little bit because it's just so horrific, and they tore through muscles and ligaments and broke bones and all that. Nobody expects that person the very next day to be at physical therapy. Nobody expects that person the next day to be going and getting traction and all these other things. The very first thing that needs to happen is that the body needs to understand that injury. That you not need to let that brain see that injury and start to believe in it and start to own it. But all too often we're so fast to skip right through this brain understanding portion that we're right off to the chiro, we're right off to the massage, or we're right because we're scared of the pain. We haven't let the body handle it. Now go back to that injury where it was just horrible for you to watch that. Absolutely horrible to watch that. That same injury that you watched that made your stomach turn, that happened to you in your spine. Yeah, that happened to you in your spine. That's why doctors really don't have their head wrapped around what we go through, because they don't, to them it's just, hey, there's this little piece of tissue pushing on this other thing and we just need to get it out of there and then they'll be fine and not be in pain and won't complain anymore. But the truth of the matter, it is a nasty, horrific injury to your spine. And therefore you need time. So be patient. I'm great at helping people through the pain of the patience part, but you have to be patient, understand that you're looking at 3, 6, months, a year, before your body begins to function right again at that level of an injury. I mean, those athletes, they'll miss entire seasons, sometimes 2 seasons. And for some reason, we think that we're going to get it back right away. So, understand the nastiness of that injury. But then on top of that, remember that while a knee is bad, likely in your back, that same level of trauma and injury is affecting nerves. And that's what makes it way more difficult. I mean, at this point, there's really nothing out there for nerve pain. And so I'm gonna urge you as you get started with Pain Sucks protocols or reading through the book that we wrote or going on Patreon, or we're going to have a wonderful YouTube. I've got lots of videos that begin uploading to YouTube so that you can subscribe and understand it. One of the things I want to have you recognize is that patience is everything. You've got to be patient. You just got to take your time and let the body understand it. And you can, and you will. And the people that do things in the right order are always winning. So people are like, wait, are you against the therapy and the chiropractic? No. I'm all for all of it. I'm not all for all of it the first day. I guess that's my point. I'm not all for all of it that very first day. I want people to have a period of time where they're understanding and learning and they're getting their foundations back before they jump into all this work hardening and strengthening. So number 1, we're going to handle micromotion. Number 2, we are going to deal with inflammation. And number 3, we are going to be patient through this process. And so what I want you to do is this. Share this if you want, and share this with the people that you know who need help with their pain. I'm going to put in the link below. We have the book that we wrote. It's a 54-page kind of an e-guide on just my top tips on micromotion and inflammation and being patient. I'm handling everything from your spiritual side all the way down to the physical side, and I'd love for you to watch that. I'm going to put it in the comments below, and then I'm going to put a little link and that with a little code, and that's going to go ahead and get 50% off that book. So which is already super expensive at $8. So 50% makes it $4. But we would love for you to share this with the world. There's too many people that are entering the surgeon's table and they don't need to. But I think that they also need guidance and they need help, and there's just a lot of scattered information. So the goal is to try to bring it back together. So, all right, you guys, it is 11:15 on Friday, and I just want you to have a blessed weekend. Reach out to me if you have any other questions. So, all right, have a wonderful day.